If we're measured as a country, then cybercrime, which is predicted to inflict damages totaling $6 trillion globally in 2021, would be the world's third largest economy after the US and China. That is a staggering statistic worth pausing to consider. Speaking on 5 data resilience capabilities to look for in storage solutions is Ron Reif, Program Director at IBM Global Storage Sales at IBM. We have a pre-recorded video which Ron will be available for a brief Q&A session after that. Thank you so much, Ron.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ron Reif from IBM's Worldwide Storage team. I want to thank you for investing your time today with SODACON and for the next few minutes at least with IBM. I want to make this time as valuable for you as possible. My intent is that you walk out of our little virtual room here together better informed than when you walked in. To that end, I'd like to start with just a couple of insights into this plague that is impacting every industry in really every country around the world. And at least this time, I'm not talking about COVID. I'm talking about hackers and malware and cyber attacks. Along the way, I'll introduce a couple of thoughts that might cause you to reconsider your approach to storage. And I'll also introduce some innovative new solutions that can help you to protect your business. Let's get going. According to the World Economic Forum, from 2008 to 2016, over 20 million people a year were forced from their homes by extreme weather such as floods, storms, and wildfires. Those disasters were also impacting businesses as well. In addition to natural disasters, attacks come frequently. According to the World Economic Forum, cyber attacks are now one of the top 10 long-term risks, high up on the list of both likelihood and impact. Bad actors are using AI to engineer more potent cyber attacks, and 1 in 4 organizations will experience a data breach in the next 2 years. A large majority of the World Economic Forum survey respondents expected the risk of cyber attacks to only increase, leading to theft of money and data and breakdowns in information infrastructure. Interpol agrees, noting that in the last year, the target of cybercrime has significantly shifted from individuals to small businesses to major corporations, governments, and critical infrastructure. And Financial Times reported that something called double extortion ransomware attacks, that is, where hackers are stealing and encrypting on-site sensitive information and then threatening to release that data, that kind of attack has increased by 200% in 2020. While the median victim size by revenue was $40 million, more than 100 victim organizations had annual revenues in excess of $1 billion. Cybercrime has become big business. Financial Times observed that the average U.S. ransomware payment increased 775% between 2019 and 2020. And what's incredible is that cybercrime as a service, get that, cybercrime as a service is a growing business model on the darknet, making increasingly sophisticated tools and malicious services more affordable and easier to access by anyone. If it were measured as a country, cybercrime, which is predicted to inflict damages totaling $6 trillion globally in 2021, cybercrime would be the world's third largest economy after the US and China. With cyber attackers, very often your data becomes infected, but the malware can take an average of 197 days to discover. That's more than 6 months. Preparing to recover from a situation like this means that you may need to maintain backup copies for a long time to find a clean, uninfected copy. Certainly, the first order of business is to prevent bad actors from gaining access to your data in the first place. IBM is an industry leader in security solutions designed to stop breaches before they happen. But when attackers do manage to get through, you'll want to be prepared to quickly respond. And that gives rise to a number of important questions about data resilience. Perhaps the first consideration has to do with the place you're storing all your primary data. Is it resilient? That's where we'll focus much of our conversation today. But there's also other deeper questions worth considering. In a traditional recovery scenario, the most recent backup copy is often the ideal one to restore. That makes it a natural place to start in response to a cyber attack. But remember, cyber attacks present a new wrinkle. The attack happened, on average, 6 months ago, and you're just now discovering it. Finding a clean, uninfected copy can take a bit of detective work. You'll need to examine a lot of progressively older backup copies to find the most recent clean copy, malware-free, of your data. You likely maintain snapshot copies on your primary storage for near instant recovery. Having a quickly accessible inventory of those snapshots and a means of instantly mounting them for inspection will be important. But most organizations IBM works with don't maintain months of snapshots on their primary storage. There are also copies you maintain on secondary storage, and you'll want the same kind of inventory and instant mount capability there too, making the job of finding the earliest clean copy easier. To improve the likelihood that you'll have a clean, uninfected copy, there are a few questions you should consider. Is your backup copy isolated? When attackers gain access to your primary data, often by way of infecting applications, you want to make sure that you have a copy that is isolated. This is where the term air gap comes in, because there's an air gap between your application data and its copy. The attacker can't cross the gap, keeping your copies uninfected. Is your copy immutable? If a sophisticated attacker manages to gain access to your uninfected copies, a second level of protection is to store that data in an unchangeable form. This is where write once, read many, or worm technologies come in. Is your copy discoverable? If you learn that you're a victim of an attack, you want to get up and running quickly. To do that, you first need to find a copy that was taken before the attacker infected your data. And as discussed, attackers often penetrate systems and lie in wait for some time, over 6 months on average. Finding a clean, uninfected copy can involve a bit of detective work. Traditionally, that has meant repeatedly mounting and inspecting progressively older backup copies. New systems make the copies searchable or have e-discovery tools that aid you in searching first, so you mount the right recovery copy the first time. Choose tools that make the discovery process easy. Can you restore your copy fast? Remember, you're keeping copies for a long time because it can often take months to discover you've been infected. That likely means your initial local snapshots have migrated off to secondary storage like an immutable object store in the cloud or a worm tape. The most isolated copy might not be the fastest to restore. There's always a balance, and every organization makes their own trade-off choices. With a variety of storage media options that can be configured as isolated and immutable, you'll have to consider the best option for your organization. Ensuring your data stays available to your applications is the primary function of storage. So, what are the characteristics of resilient primary storage that can help? Remember, in the hybrid cloud reality, organizations are working with multiple locations comprised of potentially multiple hardware vendors on premises and multiple public cloud providers. Resilient primary storage should give you great flexibility in how you leverage your infrastructure vendors and locations for data resiliency. Resilient primary storage should be capable of traditional 2-site and 3-site replication configurations, including public cloud, using your choice of synchronous or asynchronous data communication. This gives you confidence that your data can survive a localized disaster with very little or no data loss, also known as a recovery point objective, or RPO. Resilient primary storage is also about gaining access to your data quickly, in some cases immediately. This is known as a recovery time objective, or RTO. Resilient storage has options for immediate failover access to data at remote locations. Not only does your data survive a localized disaster, but your applications have immediate access to alternative copies as if nothing ever happened. And remember, these RPO and RTO options should be available regardless of your choice in primary storage hardware vendors or public cloud providers. Resilient primary storage is also concerned with protecting your data from bad actors, hackers. Encryption guards against prying eyes or outright data theft. And in the event your primary copy of data does become infected, resilient storage should also provide for making copies that are logically air-gapped from the primary data, and further making that copy unchangeable or immutable. Let's take a moment now to drill down on how IBM storage solutions can help you meet these goals. IBM Spectrum Virtualize is the strategic storage software foundation for primary storage. Storage environments under its management are capable of traditional 2-site and 3-site replication configurations, including the public cloud, using your choice of synchronous or asynchronous data communication. Depending on the needs of your data, you can achieve recovery point objectives as short as 0, meaning absolutely no data loss for critical applications, for example, your public-facing e-commerce site, or as flexible as sub-second to minute or days for data belonging to applications that may not be as critical, for example, your employee travel expense tool. IBM Flash System Storage is enterprise storage built with Spectrum Virtualize, and it comes in t-shirt sizes from entry to high-end, giving you flexibility to choose the configuration that best fits your needs. IBM SAN Volume Controller is a Spectrum Virtualize appliance. Now in its 10th generation, clients have been deploying Spectrum Virtualize on SAN Volume Controller for over a decade to bring the power of a strategic software foundation to over 500 on-premises storage systems from a wide mix of vendors. If you're interested in modernizing the storage you already have with multi-site replication, even between vendors, this is a starting point. Spectrum Virtualize environments are also capable of IBM Hyperswap. When properly deployed by IBM Lab Services, IBM will guarantee 100% data availability. This is achieved by creating an active-active relationship consisting of at least 2 I/O groups clustered together and distributed across 2 sites. We can then create a Hyperswap volume which has an independent copy in each site and uses replication to maintain synchronization between the 2 copies. Both sites are capable of processing reads and writes, which makes it an active-active solution, with reads processed from the local copy and writes always replicated between the 2 sites. In the event of a disaster, Hyperswap will automatically reconfigure itself to stop using the failed copy, and when that site recovers, it will automatically resynchronize the volume. Unlike other replication options, you can do all the provisioning and management from a single CLI or GUI, since the whole solution is within a clustered system. Remember, in the new hybrid cloud reality, organizations are working with multiple locations comprised of on-premises and public clouds. With a strategic storage software foundation like IBM Spectrum Virtualize deployed on-premises in storage systems and on public clouds, You have great flexibility in how you leverage your infrastructure locations for operational resiliency. When combined with IBM SAN Volume Controller, the Spectrum Virtualize appliance I mentioned before, unique enhanced high availability configurations are available that can deliver zero impact failover between 2 to 4 sites and the possibility of a 5th site replication that can include public cloud. When you need a copy of your production data that is hidden, non-addressable, cannot be altered or deleted, and is only usable after recovery, in other words, you want a copy that hackers can't reach, Safeguarded Copy has you covered. These are point-in-time copies that leverage all the same APIs and automation as regular snapshots, only with unique characteristics that make them the ideal place to protect your most important data. First, a safeguarded copy is offline by design, creating a logical air gap between your production data and the copy. This means that if a cyber criminal does breach your production application and gain access to your production data, there's an air gap between them and your safeguarded copy. Even if they do manage to bridge the gap, the contents of your copy can't be changed, infected, or corrupted. And unlike traditional snapshots, where the application owner often has privileges to access copies of his application, safeguarded copies can have a separation of duties between administrators of production data and administrators of the safeguarded copies. As an added layer of protection, in an industry first of its kind integration for block storage, Safeguarded Copy is integrated with IBM QRadar, the security information and event management system that helps security teams accurately detect and prioritize threats across the enterprise. Think of it this way. Cyber attackers are hitting most businesses every day. They're breaking in and covering their tracks as they go. Sure, there are logs, but it could take months for a human to make sense of all that information. Using analytics and AI, QRadar analyzes log events and network flow data to detect suspicious events in real time and aggregates related events into prioritized alerts. Imagine this simple but important scenario. Spectrum Virtualize Safeguarded Copy has separated administrative duties between administrators of production data and administrators of the safeguarded copies. But what if a cyber attacker attempted bad behavior as an administrator of the safeguarded copies, logging in outside normal business hours or attempting to delete a safeguarded copy, or maybe the same admin ID logging in from multiple locations at the same time? QRadar can catch this and shut it down. QRadar comes with prepackaged rules and over 500 out-of-the-box integrations. Integration with Spectrum Virtualize is one of them, meaning that regardless of your choice in storage hardware vendors, your storage can be more secure with IBM QRadar. We noted earlier that a malware attack can take more than 6 months to discover. That means you could need a lot of long-term backups to find a clean copy. Data protection software like Spectrum Protect Plus can be an important companion to the speed-optimized approach of storing snapshots on your storage system. IBM Spectrum Protect Plus makes backup copies of your production data, whether physical, virtual, or containerized. Like a Spectrum Virtualize Safeguarded Copy, Spectrum Protect Plus copies are also snapshots and can be made immutable. But there are also a few important distinctions that can provide added layers of protection. First, Spectrum Protect Plus snapshots are always stored someplace else, meaning they are at least on a different storage system in the same data center, but can also be in a remote data center. This ensures that your copies can survive a localized disaster. Second, because it can take a long time to discover your data has been infected, IT managers are storing a lot of long-term backup copies. Spectrum Protect Plus maintains a catalog of copies to speed identification of the right copy for your recovery. Finally, Spectrum Protect Plus allows for user self-service recovery, which can cut way down on day-to-day administrative overhead. With Spectrum Virtualize environments, encryption can come in two forms. First is the U.S. government computer security standard FIPS 140-2 validated encryption that can be enabled with IBM FlashCore modules in IBM Flash System storage. This is tamper-resistant hardware encryption for your most sensitive data. There's also software encryption that can be extended system-wide or with IBM SAN volume controller in a consistent manner to all the block storage in your data center, regardless of your choice in hardware vendors. There's also choice in how to take care of your encryption keys, either with a physical USB key in the system or with an enterprise key manager like IBM Security Key Lifecycle Manager or Gemalto SafeNet Key Secure. As noted at the beginning of our discussion, cyber criminals are becoming increasingly sophisticated, and the topic of data resiliency is both important and complex. Today, we've focused on answering the question, is your primary storage resilient? But there's more to a conversation around data resiliency and cyber resiliency. A great place to start is with the free data resilience assessment. You'll see the link on the screen. You can find it at ibm.biz/resilience assessment. You'll receive a detailed report and associated management presentation along with a roadmap of considerations and potential improvements. I encourage you to go take a look. Enjoy the rest of your time at SODACON, and thank you again for spending a few minutes with IBM. I think you're on mute. I can't hear you. That's all right. So I think we're open for a few questions and answers if there are any out there.
Anvit, we are not able to hear you.
Hey, Sunil.
Hi, Ron. Anvit, we are not able to hear you. Yeah, maybe it's fine. Yeah, Ron, just one question I see. You talked about data resilience. If you see the cloud native storage or container storage is becoming prominent these days. So how do you see the positioning of data resilience with respect to that?
That's a great question. So I mentioned a few slides back on Spectrum Protect Plus, which is integrated with container environments, Red Hat OpenShift, Kubernetes environments to deal with the container-specific data resiliency question, making snapshots, keeping those offsite in immutable copies, air-gapped, et cetera. So that's how we would approach that.
Okay.
Great
do you see any specific challenges when we move more towards container storage, especially with the data resiliency or security?
A lot of what we're dealing with and what our clients are dealing with when it comes to data is it's a similar set of needs, whether that data is underneath virtualized environments or underneath containerized environments, whether it's in an on-prem private cloud or on a public cloud. There's a lot of the same requirements for the data, whether it's data resilience like we've been talking about here, or whether it's things like performance or efficiency management, mean, the simple fact that folks are leasing their or renting their space up on the cloud doesn't mean that they're no longer interested in how efficient or performant their data is. Similarly, the same can be said with data resilience. The fact that it's containerized applications that are running on the data doesn't really change the need for that data to be resilient and for clients to be able to protect it from, hackers, etc.
Makes sense. Yeah, thank you so much, Ron.
Sure.
Anvit, do you see any other questions?
Not at the moment. Am I audible now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. I think we don't have any questions at the moment, but if we do get some questions regarding the session, we will be passing them on to you, Ron, and we will be referring to the presentation at a later date as well. Thank you so much, Ron Rife, for spending time with us here at SODACON 2021.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Great. And with that, we will now move on to the next session of the night or day, wherever you are. And that's going to be a lightning talk with a technical overview of the OpenStack Kubernetes and storage plugins by Kendall Nelson. If you can all just join the next session, we'll catch you there.